Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Creative Writers and Illustrators, and my guest for the day is Shabnam Minwalla. She's out with two fabulous books, one middle grade book. This middle grade book is from Talking Cub. Would you like to talk about it, Shabnam?
Yeah, so my Nimmi series has sort of traveled with me for quite a few years now.
Yes.
It was born actually with a phone call when one day Sudeshna called me. She's the children's editor at Speaking Tiger and Talking Cub. And she casually said, we're looking for a middle grade series on a school series. It so happened that on that day, that very day, I had sent in another book of mine to the publisher. That book was What Maya Saw. So suddenly I had this huge vacuum, this empty space before me, and I was wondering now, how will I fill it? Because such a big book is over, and I was feeling quite panicked about life. So the thought of doing a middle grade book on an ordinary schoolgirl was appealing and challenging. So I sat down and I thought about, so luckily for me, I have three daughters. Two of them were in that middle school space. And every night when I would put them to bed, they would tell me all about what had happened in their school. MasterChef competition or burst bean bags or bullies or friendship traumas or friendship joys, boys and girls and how they communicate or don't communicate. So I had fodder, and slowly Nimmi came into my head. So for me, the big challenge actually was, up to that point, all the writing I had done, a lot of female protagonists, but all of them had a superpower or something that was a little extraordinary. Many of them. So in Strange Haunting, Lara can see the ghost. In Shy Supergirl, the shy Supergirl can see people's colors and so get a sense of what kind of people they are. So that what Maya saw. Maya has perceptive powers. Here, my challenge was, I wanted a girl who was a girl like all of us, a girl in the middle, not too pretty, not too plain, not too fantastic at academics, not too bad at academics, but the kid in the middle row in the school with her friends and her joys and her sorrows. And Nimmi sort of came to me, her face and her hair came into my head. And strangely, she brought with her a whole lot of likes and dislikes. I didn't even actively think about it. But she sort of made it very clear that grey was her favorite color, that the monsoon was her favorite season, and that she loved words, which is something even I love. And Nimmi one was born. Then Sudeshna said, will you take a crack at another one? So then Detective Days came about. That was the case of the burst bean bags and who burst the bean bags. Then the third Nimmi came about, which was Bizupa Birthday. And I think Sudeshna and I both thought of it as a 3-part series. So lockdown happened, the world seemed to change. And then suddenly Sudeshna contacted me and she said, you know what I've been thinking, and I'm missing Nimmi, let's do a Nimmi 4. But let Nimmi grow up a little. Just maybe from grade 6, she should move to grade 7. So I said, yeah, that sounds right. And, as Sudeshna and I were talking, it occurred to me that she was right. And Nimmi, I wanted her to see, up to this point, she'd been sort of there and a whole lot of things happening around her. This time, of course, that would be the situation, but I wanted her little, to a small extent, to take charge of her life and to start making sense of the world around her and how to navigate it. And so that was, for me, very challenging. Because up to this point, Nimmi was clearly Nimmi. She's, I wouldn't say a victim of circumstances, but she's a pawn very often in the madness around her. Here, I wanted her to graduate from pawn to bishop or pawn to castle, or not queen yet, but yeah. So I did a couple of drafts. I wasn't happy. This Nimmi took me a long time to write. Otherwise, Nimmi doesn't take me so long to write. But this particular one, because I was very clear that I wanted to move in a certain direction without it being forced. So, yeah, I whittled away at it. Also, I just finished writing Zen. So, in a way, my voice was not, that light middle grade voice was not coming easily to me. So, it took a little time. But I'm actually thrilled with the way Crawful camping days turned out. Yes. Because Nimmi does everything I want her to. Grow up a little, become a little tougher, and still be the sweet Nimmi that all the school kids around seem to like so much.
I love the book. There is so much of humor. There is so much you bring through the wordplay. You know, when I read Rohan's letter, I was I was giggling. I was in splits. You know, that kind
Yeah.
of sets, and the book is a hilarious ride right from chapter 1. I mean, it just, I think you've captured the beauty of South Mumbai schools and what happens there, the children. You know, I think it also helps that your kids are in the same age group.
Yeah, now of course my kids are much older. They're in the 11th and one is in university. So in a sense, I worry a bit, have I lost touch with that target? But I think children are children in a way.
Yes, true,
and
true.
South Mumbai schools never change.
So, you know, there's a lot which is happening with Nimmi in this book. You know,
Yes.
So do you think being familiar with a character for so many years, that has kind of helped you to work?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I feel Nimmi's Spectacular School Days, the first one, the storyline to me when I read now is not so strong because I've spent so much time just introducing the characters. By the point of Crawful camping days, I know Nimmi very well, but forget Nimmi, I know Rohan, I know Imran, I know even the wicked characters, Alisha Dubashto, of course, she's imprinted in my brain. Sophia, the disloyal friend, remains for me one of the truly not nice characters I've written, you know, even more than my regular villains in my more dark fantasy books. She is for me the person that makes me very sad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But so I know all of them in a way, so I really understand what they would do, how they would function. And that makes it easier and harder in a way, because then the characters don't cooperate with you. They don't behave in a neat way because they assert themselves. And now Nimmi has the secret admirer. And I really don't know who the secret admirer is. Okay, so I've got candidates.
So we have to wait for book 5.
If there is a book 5, he will be revealed.
Yes, there will be. I think the audience is also growing along with Nimmi. Right, so they are ready for all the plot and all the masti which is going to right.
So, you know, one review of the book said, why are children dating so young? And I thought, you know, wait, you have a little child, wait till they reach grade 7. You know, dating, of course, in grade 7 is a very innocent thing. It's a fancy word to describe a friendship. That's a little more than just a friendship.
Yeah.
But it's so amusing to watch, and it's so, in a way, wonderful also, and scary also.
Yes.
Coming from a mom.
What I was surprised to read was, you know, the use of the word bra and waxing, which is like, it's a total normal life of a teen. But I have not seen those words in a middle grade Indian book. So do you think Indian parents are ready to let their children read a book which has bra and waxing?
You know, so when my oldest daughter was young, I got her Dear God, It's Me, Margaret.
Margaret, right.
Margaret, yeah. And Margaret, I think, talks about her periods.
Yeah.
And I remember Alia was so amazed. She said, people actually write about this. You know, we hide this all the time. How are they writing about it? And I thought, this is so ridiculous. It's 1/4 of our lives. It's 1/4 of our reality. And I really, it does not have to be something you talk about all the time, but it should be something that is part of.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just normalize the life of a teen. Yes.
Yeah. And as Nimmi and friends grow, of course they wax. Of course they surreptitiously apply lipstick. And of course there's pressure on the parents to say, yes, you are allowed to wax. Like poor Mrs. Daruwala, the strict mummy has to succumb finally. But yeah, so in a way, Mrs. Daruwala is going through the sort of the cycle of mummydom that I had to go through, and that we all go through.
Yeah, true. So
Mumbai
seems to be, absolutely. Mumbai seems to be your favorite setting, be it Zen, be it Nimmi CCD, be it what Maya saw. You know, a whole lot of books has Mumbai right in the center of action. And it's like, you know, what I like about your writing is that you discover one aspect, one thing to explore about the city, and there are so many different areas to explore. That is
Yeah.
so wonderful. It shows the intimate connection you have with the city.
Yeah. So, like I always say that for me, Mumbai is my true protagonist. It doesn't matter if it's a Nimmi book or a Zen book or a Saira book or a Maya book. Mumbai is really the backdrop and the stage and the character in a way. I would say in Zen, especially the city for me was what gave me the story. So, I wrote a book on Colaba. It was a non-fiction book for adults. And but I did a lot of research. And I think as I started doing research, I saw how Colaba had changed over the years. And it came as a huge shock to me that the building I live in, the area I've grown up in, was once a cotton green, where people were doing huge transactions, selling and buying bales of cotton, haggling, and really the city's money boom happened right where my building stands. And the little temple near my house was probably the temple where all the Premchand, Roychand and all went to pray for, big deals and big money and, were making all their big schemes. And as I thought about the city then, I thought about a girl, a teenager, and I just imagined a teenager walking through that old cotton green. And I think that vision in my head for some reason was so strong that when Zen was born, I had to, Zainab walking through the cotton green was like a very big moment for me. And I knew that so I kept writing the book and I kept thinking, where will she walk through the cotton green? Her life will not allow for somebody to be. And then, of course, circumstances took her there and, the plot took her there.
So, I'd like to share with my readers the second book, which is Creating Waves. This is Zen, published by Penguin Random House, and a fab book. I think, would I be wrong if I say this is like the magnum opus?
Yeah, well, it's the fattest book I've written, it's taken me the longest time. And it's the book that I've tried to stop writing many times. I can't manage this. And then I would put it away. In fact, I stopped it to write Murder at Daisy Apartments. I don't know if you've read that. So I actually stopped during lockdown and wrote that instead because you see, there is a scene quite early on in Zen where Zen and the boy she is interested in the romance, Yash, are taking a walk through Colaba. And I was writing that scene and lockdown happened. And when I went down, my city had become unrecognizable. My Colaba, the walk they were taking could not have happened in the city. And I was so horrified and sad. And, and it took 1 year, the city was like that. I felt I can't write this book because this book is about that Mumbai, that Bombay. And I just put it away and wrote another book. And then but I kept thinking about Zen and she kept sort of knocking at my head and saying, when will you let me out? And then one day I went back to Colaba and life had returned. Then I said, okay, time to go back to Zen. And,
your previous YA books have been centered around mysteries, but this is the first time you have taken an issue which has affected all of us in small measures, in big measures. We've not voiced it, but I think, through the characters, you have kind of echoed the sentiments of so many Indians. And I think, two of the characters, what they say kind of remain with me, which Zen's Papa saying, when he explains why some people will leave the country. It's not because of money or opportunities or even because of Pascal, but because there is no telling where the hatred will end. Or be it Mausi Matthews, the school principal, who lives in the terror of someone who objects to something all the time. I mean, these are the two realities we are facing. They're right there in your face. You brush it under the carpet, but they go round and round and they are there.
And I think for young people, it's scary. And it's, you have to figure out how to engage with it, whether you engage with it or whether you shut your eyes. But it is just something that is there and very much a part of their reality, I feel. And of course, in Zen herself is not a firebrand. She is more interested in living a quiet life with her music and her books and her history. But her friend Menka is the force who pulls her into all kinds of uncomfortable situations. And I think Zen is a little like me. So for a long time while things were happening around me, I was trying to shut my eyes and write horror And then I realized that the true horror is happening on the front page of the newspapers.
Yes.
And I wanted it to be a balanced book. I didn't want it to be a rant. So some of my characters are very one-sided, some of my characters are very another-sided. But I really wanted to say in this book that there is a middle ground, a meeting point, and when you reach that meeting point, that is when the magic will happen.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if it has come through, and I don't know if it is even a reality and feasible. But I felt it is so important for people to talk across barriers.
And I think you put down that message very beautifully in the right measures, and the message is subtle, but it kind of hits home. That's the power of your words. So beautifully done.
Thank you. So, it was a scary book to write.
Absolutely. I can imagine, because you have to be thinking not just about the plot and the way your characters will behave, but you also have to think about how you're going to handle the plot and what words you're going to use. The tone, especially the tone, which is very tricky, I think. Yes, your audience is young adults, but then I think that is like it's an important thing which you choose when you write this book. You captured the mood of every chapter. There are the colors, you just played with colors. Be it the rust-colored kurta which introduces the main character, or the white sari of the Zainab of the 1935 Zainab. And of course, every chapter has a color. So what was it that was going on in your mind? And they are not the regular the prefix for every color is not your regular. It's not from your regular, what do you say, your crayon box, your colors. You actually taken the effort to think about some of them. It's like a big city blue, forget me not blue, drizzle blue. There's so much of variety. So what were you thinking?
So the character of Kay that Zainab has that Zainab falls in love with. I was looking for a profession for him. Now, I didn't know much about the 1930s. So, and I'm a lazy writer. So I literally will do anything in the world other than write. Writing is my last resort when I have run out of everything else to do. So I sat and I did research and I was looking at industries, random academic papers on random industries of the 1930s. What I knew about Kay is I wanted him to be artistic. So first I thought maybe he'll paint film posters. Then I thought, okay, he comes from Lahore, so he definitely has to be from the art school there. But what could he be? Now Zainab's family is a trader family. So what would a person like that, how would he connect up with them? And then suddenly I stumbled upon this paper about dyes and the dyeing industry. And it was so interesting. So there are one or two academicians who seem to have spent their life talking about the German dye industry in the India of the 1930s and 40s. So it was invaluable to somebody like me. Spent days and days reading about the various companies. And I decided that, okay, this guy is going to be involved in the dyeing industry. And so obviously when he passes his codes to Zainab, colors seem to be the way to go. Then as I was reading back, to what I'd already written, I realized that I already had a lot of color in there. And it had just crept in. And I started thinking about colors, and I got so many names of so many colors. So the colors that he uses as code, I wanted them to be real colors, which are actually there, but unusual colors. So I did research on colors. I went into every painting, paint seller website. I went into every kind of Google Doc, every kind of Wikipedia, everything. You should see my bookmark section. It's got about 30 pages on colors. And I started just writing names of colors. And then I realized that for me, every color has a mood, and every chapter has a mood, of course. And so I said, let me see, maybe I'll find a color for every chapter. I don't know if it'll work, but it did. And in fact, I feel quite sad because about 30-40 colors are sitting there not used and looking very woebegone.
I'm sure you'll find a way to bring them to your story. So
I hope one day.
Yeah. So your book, not just has colors, it also has quotations, it has poetry, it has musical references. So I think your book has kind of beautifully blended historical fiction and contemporary fiction through all these tiny nuggets.
Yeah. So I wanted to create a different mood for Zainab and for Zen. I wanted those stories to just read differently and then kind of come together in the end. So I think that's why I used a lot of contemporary pop culture references. And I feel we all grow up in a soup of
Absolutely.
songs and poems and advertisements and protest posters and newspaper articles. And that's all a part of our life, just as much as what we see in the house around us, right? It inhabits our heads as much as the dining table in front of us or whatever. And so again, that was an experiment. And till the end, I was wondering, should I keep all this or not? Then I thought, let the editor decide. So I sent it to Shayoni. And she really loved it. And in fact, she encouraged me to make a playlist. And so there's a Zen playlist on Spotify. And
okay.
yeah, with Zen songs and Zainab songs.
Oh, okay.
When I'd been researching Kolaba, the book, I realized that in the 1930s, a lot of jazz musicians were living in the bylanes of Kolaba. And that the entire area resounded with jazz music. And so I felt that has to be Zainab's track, the track of her life. And so I did a lot of research. As you can see, I did a lot of research how to put off writing. So I did a lot of research on the jazz music of those days. It was great fun.
Yeah. So both the Zainabs, the one of 1935 and 2019, choose the happy for now situation. They kind of enjoy life. They do what they can in the boundaries which are drawn around them by society and family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to be honest, okay, so Zainab's story, I knew very clearly where it would end because I could not see an option. It had to end where it ended. That was pre-written. The day I wrote the first line of her story, I knew this is where it will end. I didn't know the exact twists and turns it would take. But Zen, or the contemporary Zainab, that was tricky. Okay, because I did not know, because my initial reaction was impossible. This can never be. And then I softened towards the character of Yash. I softened towards the idea of a middle ground. And I realized these are kids, right? I mean, they at 18, 19, 20, what does forever mean? It doesn't mean.
It doesn't make sense. Yes, they are hopeful. They are optimistic. They have a rosy. They look at world with rose-tinted glasses. So it is. I think it's just an apt ending you have chosen for the book. With,
I feel I can't do any more or any less for them.
Absolutely.
I just felt.
You never know where each story goes. It depends on the characters and a whole lot of
absolutely
situations.
And I didn't want to follow them beyond that point. I just went down. Good luck to you. Let's see what happens.
So was it a trouble creating? I mean, you are familiar with the city of now. Mumbai. But was it difficult to recreate the tiny nuances of 1935? As you said now, because you did the Kolaba research, you could have stumbled upon tiny details which you have kind of used.
Yeah, so I stumbled upon more than the details, the sources. So I got really lucky with that because I realized that the Bombay Chronicle had been publishing through that entire time. And at that point, it was free on archive.org. So I got very excited and read every single copy of the Bombay Chronicle of 1935 and into 1936, where the story ends. So I read about 300 newspapers to get a real sense of that time. Because I didn't know anything. Did they have fridges? I didn't know. And I got so excited when I saw an ad saying you can rent a fridge for this much money. I said, chalo. Zainab's mother is just the sort to want that fridge. And Ben Fatima is just the sort to want to make a fancy salad and put it in that fridge. It just clicked. I didn't know if they had cars. I didn't know if they had a telephone. So all of that came to me bit by bit, article by article. I didn't know what the political mood was. I mean, of course, we know freedom struggle, but precisely, we didn't know. But I kept reading, and it's amazing, when you look, things come to you. And I am on a Colaba research chat. So sometimes when I was really puzzled, I would pose a question there and people would come up with answers. Or randomly, people would post pictures of their grandmothers in the 1930s, great-grandmother, my great-grandmother in 1930 with her baby. Can you imagine she was wearing a skirt like this? So immediately I knew now what kind of dress Dorothy would be for herself for Christmas. Then I read a lot of biographies set in the 1930s. Lot of lives of Parsi women. I couldn't find anything on Bora Muslim women specifically. I found an article about education in the Bora Muslim community in the 1930s. So I got a sense that, they could be educated and, all of that. Of course, my grandparents, I really feel sad that I didn't ask them all these questions when they were still there. But how do you know? But I remember them. My granny was a hot favorite of mine. She's like been one of the great forces in my life. Lover of jewelry, lover of clothes, lover of everything fancy. So, for me, every time I would wonder about Zainab's home or how she, the world she inhabited, I would think of my Mamaji and, the answer would arrive. So I think all of that, because in a way, my mom is Bora, my dad was a Parsi. And I'm married into a Hindu family, Ambram family. So, in a way, to really go back into the Bora roots was very interesting. Because you know how it is when you're young, you spend a lot of time and energy rebelling and trying to shed what you are. So this was discovery of a kind, and it was wonderful. Yeah.
Nice.
And another great source was the Times of India directories of those days. So, there were very few people had phones then. Phones were just coming. But these directories used to talk about every building on every road.
Detailed.
So you go to a road. So you go to Meriwether Road and you say, okay, this building was there, this building was there, and they would talk about every person who was living in each building and about the professions of those people and every shop on the shop front. Can you imagine the richness? So every shop I've talked about was actually mentioned in the Times of India directory. And I knew which buildings were built then and which buildings came up later. So I knew I exactly mapped Colaba in the 1930s. And every building or shop I've mentioned existed. American Express bakery or Yvonne's ribbons and laces or whatever. So I feel sad I could never see the original, but I hope I recreated them with some degree of
I was personally very happy to see Light of Asia there. It's always nice to see the Cotton Green station. That is how I know, because I used to catch the Harbour Line. So, but then, now you read these books and then you see, these books actually had a history. This is what happened.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. So when I realized Light of Asia was there, so I was reading about that street and I thought, oh my God, this is the perfect place to, use as a landmark, as an element in the book. And it's really exciting. Research of this kind is super fun.
Yeah, you never know when to end, right? Because the research part is a very exciting phase of writing.
Yeah. And little things, like I mentioned a story about a freedom fighter called Baba Genu, who lies in front of a truck to prevent imported goods from entering the city during the Swadeshi movement. So I read about him because I was looking for freedom fighters who would have inspired by Faizullah, right? So I found him. And the next day I needed to buy some chemicals for my daughter for some project of hers from Kalwa Devi. And so I called the shop and I said, what is your street address? This was the next day. And he said, Baba Genu Street. And I almost, I couldn't believe my ears. I was so excited. So now whenever I go that side, I look for that name, on the road and feel happy. Feel happy that he's remembered.
Absolutely. Yeah. The sacrifices of so many people, who've done so much for us to be here today. So we're running short of time. Quickly tell our readers why they should be reading Zen and Nimmi's latest book.
So Nimmi, if you want to giggle and if you want to know about the life of a middle grade schoolgirl and about her madcap adventures. And Zen, that's tougher, right? Then I think to understand what we are now as a country, and the possibilities that lie before us, the paths that lie before us. And I think to know a little about the country that was in the 1930s, and to meet two girls, one Zen and one Zainab, and get to know them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Would you like to hold the books close to the screen?
Sure, sure. It's Nimmi and Ulta.
Ulta.
That is Zen. And it doesn't matter even if it's Ulta, because Aradhana is such a fabulous, even the back is so
the
beautiful.
cover, yeah. I think this is the first duckbill book to have those shimmers on the cover. She's done a
Oh,
fab
really?
job. Yeah, the golden.
And I love the inside.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a Shayoni's idea, and brilliant.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much, Shabnam. Thank you.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah.
and see you soon. Bye.